My family called asking me to pay for my brother's lawyer. I asked what for. Turns out he's suing me. I laughed. Waited for the punchline. There wasn't one. So I hung up. 3 days later his lawyer called me directly. Biggest mistake of his life. My mother called on a Sunday morning while I was making eggs. She said, "Honey, we need to talk about Dominic." I said, "What did he do now?" She said, "He needs help with a lawyer. A good one. He can't afford it and we were hoping you could cover the retainer. It's $7,500. I said, "What's the lawsuit about?" She said, "Well, he's suing someone." I said, "Who?" She said, "You." I laughed. Genuinely. The kind of laugh where your body decides before your brain does. I waited for the punchline. Looked at my eggs. Looked at my phone. Looked back at my eggs. She said, "It's not a joke, Barrett." I said, "My brother is suing me. And you're calling to ask me to pay for his lawyer." She said, "He feels very strongly that." I said, "Mom. He's suing me. And you want me to pay for the attorney who's suing me. Do you hear yourself?" She started explaining. I stopped listening after the third sentence because the third sentence contained the words "he deserves his fair share" and I knew exactly where this was going. I said, "Tell Dominic to get his own lawyer. With his own money. If he has any. Which he doesn't. Because he never has. Goodbye." I hung up. Went back to my eggs. They were overcooked. Dominic cost me scrambled eggs. Add it to the list. 3 days later the call came. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But I was between meetings and figured it might be a supplier. The voice on the other end said, "Mr. Barrett Locke? My name is Bennett Hargrove. I'm an attorney representing your brother Dominic Locke in a civil matter regarding the disposition of shared family business assets." I said, "I'm sorry. Repeat that last part." He said, "Shared family business assets. Your brother has retained my firm to pursue his rightful claim to equity in Locke Mechanical, the company you currently operate. He believes he's entitled to a 40% ownership stake based on his contributions to the business during its formative years." I said, 40%. He said, 40%. I said, "His contributions." He said, "That's correct." I said, "Mr. Hargrove. Can I ask you a question?" He said, "Of course." I said, "Did my brother tell you what his contributions were?" He said, "He indicated that he worked for the company for several years and was instrumental in its early growth." I said, "He worked for me for 11 months. He showed up late 47 times. I documented every one. He was written up 6 times. He crashed a company van into a fire hydrant because he was texting. The repair was $6,200. He never paid it. He took a company credit card and charged $3,800 in personal expenses including a weekend in Atlantic City that he called a business development trip. There was no business. There was no development. There were slot machines. Silence on the other end. I said, "He was terminated for cause after he left a job site unlocked overnight and $14,000 in copper pipe was stolen. I have the police report. I have the termination letter. I have every write-up, every late slip, every incident report, and a signed acknowledgement from Dominic that he received severance of $2,000 as a courtesy, not as compensation for equity, and that his employment was concluded with no further obligations on either side." Longer silence. I said, "Mr. Hargrove. Did my brother show you any of this documentation?" He said, "I'll need to review my client's file." I said, "You do that. And while you're reviewing, tell your client that if this lawsuit is filed, my attorney will respond with a counterclaim for the $6,200 in van repairs, $3,800 in credit card charges, and $14,000 in stolen materials that resulted from his negligence. That's $24,000 he owes me. Plus attorney fees. Plus damages to my business reputation if this frivolous claim becomes public. Tell him to do the math. Then tell him to drop it." He said, "Are you threatening my client?" I said, "I'm informing you of documented facts. If that feels like a threat, your client's case is weaker than you think. Have a good day, Mr. Hargrove." I hung up. Called my attorney before my coffee got cold. Let me back up. Because this didn't start with a phone call. It started 15 years ago in a garage that smelled like motor oil and bad decisions. My name is Barrett Locke. 38. I own Locke Mechanical. Commercial HVAC. Industrial refrigeration. Clean room climate systems. 23 employees. $3.4 million in annual revenue. 3 service vans. An office building I own outright. A client list that includes 2 hospitals, a pharmaceutical lab, and a data center. My brother Dominic is 35. He owns nothing. Has nothing. Lives in a rental he's 2 months behind on. Drives a car with a check engine light that's been on since the Obama administration. Works part-time at a shipping warehouse. $15.50 an hour. When he shows up. Which is about 70% of the time based on what his roommate told my cousin. We are not the same. My father Hank started Locke Mechanical in 2004. Small operation. Residential HVAC. Furnace repairs. AC installs. 1 van. 2 employees. Him and a guy named Sal who'd been doing duct work since the Carter administration. Hank was good at the work. Bad at the business. Didn't keep books. Didn't file quarterly taxes. Didn't carry the right insurance. By 2009 the company was $80,000 in debt and Hank's health was failing. Bad heart. Years of crawling through attics and crawl spaces. His knees were gone. His back was held together by ibuprofen and stubbornness. I was 23 when Hank called me and said, "Barrett, I'm going to lose the company. I've been working for a large mechanical contractor in the city. Making $62,000. Learning the commercial side. Learning how to bid contracts. How to manage payroll. How to keep the IRS from showing up at your door." I said, "Show me the books." He said, "There aren't really books." I said, "Show me whatever you have." He had a shoebox. Literally. Invoices, receipts, and tax forms stuffed into a Nike shoebox. Some had coffee stains. One was partially burned because he'd used it as a coaster near the stove. I spent 3 weeks organizing his financial disaster. Found $80,000 in debt. $34,000 in unpaid taxes. $12,000 in overdue insurance premiums. Revenue of $140,000 a year against expenses of $160,000. He was losing $20,000 a year and didn't know it because he'd never added the numbers. I told my father the truth. I said, "You have 2 options. Close the company and declare bankruptcy. Or let me take over, restructure everything, and try to save it. But if I take over completely. My name on the business. My decisions. No interference." Hank signed the company over to me for $1. $1. Notarized. Filed with the state. My attorney at the time, a woman named Bridger, drafted the transfer documents. Clean. Airtight. Dominic was 20 years old when this happened. He was living at home. No job. No education after high school. Playing video games 14 hours a day. When I took over the company, Dominic said, "Cool. Can I work there?" I said yes. Because he was my brother. Because I thought maybe structure would help. Maybe a paycheck. Maybe purpose. I was wrong. Month 1. Dominic showed up 3 hours late on his 3rd day. Said his alarm didn't go off. I docked his pay. Month 2. He left a job site without finishing the install. The client called me. I had to drive 45 minutes to finish it myself at 9 p.m. I wrote him up. Month 3. The texting incident. Company van. Fire hydrant. $6,200 in damage. I made him sign an acknowledgement that the cost would be deducted from future bonuses. There were never any bonuses. Because he never earned one. Month 4. The credit card. $3,800. Atlantic City. Business development. I canceled the card. Reported the charges internally. Made him sign a repayment agreement. He paid $200 in the first month. Then nothing. Month 6. He called in sick 8 times. I have the attendance log. A physical log. Paper. Date. Time. Reason. Because after month 2, I started documenting everything. Bridger told me to. She said, "If family works for you, document like you're building a court case. Because someday you might need one." She was right. 15 years early. Month 9. Dominic started telling other employees that the company was half his. That our father started it and therefore both sons had a claim. That I'd taken it from Hank. That I was greedy. My lead technician Barlow came to me and said, "Boss. Your brother is telling the guys he owns part of this company. Is that true?" I said, "Hank signed the company to me for $1. Notarized. Filed with the state. Dominic has 0 ownership. 0 equity. 0 claim. He's an employee. A bad one." Barlow said, "You should fire him." I said, "I know." Month 11. The copper pipe. $14,000. Left the site unlocked. Walked away at 3 p.m. Didn't set the alarm. Didn't lock the gate. Just left. Told me he forgot. $14,000 in materials gone by morning. I fired him. In my office. With Bridger present. Handed him a termination letter. Handed him a severance check for $2,000. Had him sign an acknowledgement that said, "I, Dominic Locke, acknowledge that my employment with Locke Mechanical has been terminated. I acknowledge receipt of $2,000 in severance. I acknowledge that I hold no ownership interest, equity stake, or future claim in Locke Mechanical or its assets." He signed it. Didn't read it. Just signed and took the check and said, "Whatever, man. This company's going to fail without me." That was 14 years ago. The company didn't fail. It grew. Year 1 after firing Dominic, revenue $180,000. Still in debt but bleeding less. Year 3, $420,000. Debt cleared. First profitable year. Year 5, $1.1 million. Moved into commercial work. Hired employee number 8. Year 8, $2.3 million. Bought the office building. Expanded into industrial refrigeration. Year 12, $3.4 million. 23 employees. Hospital contracts. Data center work. Clean rooms. Every dollar. Every client. Every employee. Every van. Every tool. Mine. Built from a shoebox of coffee-stained receipts and $80,000 in debt that my father created and my brother made worse. Dominic spent those 14 years doing what Dominic does. Warehouse jobs. Delivery jobs. A brief attempt at selling insurance that lasted 6 weeks. A landscaping side gig that collapsed when he left a mower at a client's house and it got stolen. He borrowed money from Hank. From my mother Ruth. From cousins. From friends who stopped being friends after the second unpaid loan. He never held a job for more than 18 months. Never saved more than $1,500. Never owned anything worth more than the car he's currently driving, which is worth about $2,800 based on the Blue Book value of a 2011 Nissan with 187,000 miles and a check engine light. Now. Back to the lawsuit. After I hung up on Hargrove, I called my attorney. Not Bridger. She retired 3 years ago. My current attorney is a man named Callahan. Patrick Callahan. Senior partner at a firm that handles my business contracts, my real estate, and my insurance disputes. He's expensive. $425 an hour. Worth every cent. I said, Patrick. My brother is suing me for 40% of Lock Mechanical. He hired a lawyer named Bennett Hargrove. He's claiming equity based on contributions during formative years. Patrick said, what contributions? I said, 11 months of employment. 47 late arrivals. $6,200 in van damage. $3,800 in credit card fraud. $14,000 in stolen materials from negligence. A signed termination agreement specifically waiving any ownership claims. Patrick said, he signed a waiver. I said, Bridger made sure of it. Notarized. Witnessed. Patrick said, Barrett. This case is dead on arrival. The waiver alone kills it. Add the transfer documents from your father, the documented cause for termination, and 14 years of zero involvement. No judge in this state would entertain this. I said, then why did Hargrove take it? Patrick said, because Hargrove is either desperate for clients or your brother lied to him. Probably both. I'll file a response. And I want to countersue. I said, for what? He said, the van damage. The credit card charges. The negligence on the copper theft. Plus attorney fees for defending a frivolous lawsuit. I'll add a claim for abuse of process. Your brother filed a lawsuit he knew or should have known had no merit. That's sanctionable. I said, do all of it. Patrick filed the response in 4 days. 22 pages. Every document. Every write-up. The transfer agreement from Hank. The termination letter. The signed waiver. The police report on the copper theft. The credit card statements. The van repair invoice. 14 years of tax returns showing zero involvement from Dominic. Zero. Attached to the response was the counterclaim. $24,000 in documented losses from Dominic's employment. Plus $18,000 in attorney fees. Plus a petition for sanctions against Hargrove for filing a frivolous suit. $42,000. That's what Dominic's lawsuit was about to cost him. He came for 40% of $3.4 million. He's going to leave with a $42,000 bill. Hargrove called Patrick 2 days after receiving the response. Patrick told me about it. Hargrove said, my client may have overstated his contributions. We'd like to explore a settlement. Patrick said, what kind of settlement? Hargrove said, drop the counterclaim. My client drops the suit. Everyone walks away. Patrick said, your client filed a fraudulent claim against a legitimate business. He cost my client time, money, and operational focus during our busiest quarter. Walking away isn't an option. The counterclaim stands. If your client wants to settle, we'll accept $24,000 plus fees. Cash. 30 days. Hargrove said, my client doesn't have $24,000. Patrick said, then your client should have thought about that before suing a man who keeps 14 years of documentation in organized files. Your client walked into a courtroom with a handshake and a story. My client walked in with a filing cabinet. This is a math problem, counselor. And your side doesn't have the numbers. Hargrove called back the next day. He said, I'm withdrawing from the case. My client was not forthcoming about the circumstances of his employment or the signed waiver. I can't represent a client who withholds material facts. His own lawyer dropped him. In the middle of the case. Because Dominic lied. Dominic didn't stop. He found another lawyer. A guy named Fisk who operates out of a strip mall and advertises on bus benches. Fisk filed an amended complaint. This time the claim was different. Not equity. Inheritance. Fisk argued that Hank's $1 transfer to me was done under duress. That Hank was ill and I pressured him into signing over the company. That the transfer should be voided and the company assets split between both sons. Patrick called me. He said, they changed strategy. Now they're claiming the transfer was coerced. I said, Hank signed it in front of a notary, a witness, and Bridger. There's a video recording of the signing because Bridger recorded every major transaction. It's in her archived files. Patrick said, there's a video. I said, Bridger was paranoid. Said video documentation prevents, he said, she said. She recorded Hank signing. He's smiling in the video. He says on camera, I'm signing this over to Barrett because he's the only one who can save it. Dominic can't run a lawnmower. His exact words. Patrick said, send me that video. I sent it. Patrick filed a motion to dismiss with the video attached. He also filed for enhanced sanctions against Fisk for filing an amended complaint that contradicted available evidence. The judge reviewed the video. Reviewed the original transfer documents. Reviewed Bridger's notarized records. Dismissed the case in 17 minutes. 17 minutes. That's how long Dominic's second attempt lasted. Less time than it takes to install a thermostat. The judge also granted sanctions. Against Fisk. $4,200 in penalties for filing a claim without adequate investigation. Fisk was furious. Called Dominic in the hallway after the ruling and said, you told me your father was coerced. He's on video laughing and calling you incompetent. I'm done. You owe me $3,500 for my time. Don't call my office again. 2 lawyers. Both dropped him. Both because he lied. The counterclaim moved forward. Dominic didn't respond. Didn't hire a third lawyer. Didn't show up to the hearing. Default judgment. $24,000 plus $18,000 in attorney fees. $42,000 total. Dominic doesn't have $42,000. He doesn't have $4,200. He has a 2011 Nissan and a warehouse job and a roommate who's considering changing the locks. Patrick filed for wage garnishment. $15.50 an hour. After taxes, that's roughly $1,980 a month. Garnishment takes 25% in this state. $495 a month. $42,000 at $495 a month is 7 years. Dominic will be 42 years old before he finishes paying for the lawsuit he filed against me. My mother called again. After the judgment. She said, Barrett. This is too far. $42,000? He can't survive on 75% of his paycheck. He'll lose his apartment. I said, he sued me, Mom. He walked into a courtroom and claimed 40% of a company he nearly destroyed. He lied to 2 lawyers. He wasted my time, my money, and my attorney's patience. And he did it because he spent 35 years believing that the world owes him something for showing up. She said, he's your brother. I said, he's a 35-year-old man who sued his brother for a company he got fired from 14 years ago. He filed a fraudulent claim. He lied under oath about Dad's transfer. He cost me $18,000 in legal fees that I shouldn't have had to spend. The $42,000 judgment is not punishment. It's reimbursement. For 15 years of tolerating a man who takes and takes and takes and then sues you when there's nothing left to take. She said, can you at least reduce it? Meet him halfway. I said, halfway? He claimed 40% of $3.4 million. That's $1.36 million he was trying to take from me. I'm charging him $42,000. That's 3% of what he wanted. He's getting a 97% discount on his own greed. Tell him he's lucky. She didn't have a response. My father called the next day. Hank. 68 now. Bad heart. Worse knees. Still stubborn. He said, Barrett. I heard about the judgment. I said, did Dominic tell you he lied about the transfer? Said I pressured you. Said you were under duress. Hank went quiet. I said, there's a video, Dad. Bridger recorded it. You're on camera signing the papers and saying Dominic can't run a lawnmower. You were smiling. The judge watched it. Dismissed the case in 17 minutes. Hank said, I never told Dominic I was pressured. I said, I know. He made it up. Like the business development trip. Like the equity he told my employees he had. Like every story he's ever told about why things didn't work out for him. Hank said, he's struggling, Barrett. I said, he's been struggling his entire life. And every time he struggles, someone bails him out. You. Mom. Me. Cousins. Friends. He's 35 and he's never once sat with the consequences of his own decisions because someone always writes a check. The $42,000 judgment is the first consequence he can't charm his way out of. Maybe it'll teach him something. Probably won't. But at least it's on the record. Hank said, you're hard. I said, I'm accurate. There's a difference. Dominic sent me a text 2 weeks after the judgment. First direct contact in 14 years. He said, you really going to garnish my wages? Over scrambled eggs and a phone call. I said, over $6,200 in van damage you never paid. $3,800 in credit card fraud. $14,000 in stolen copper because you couldn't lock a gate. 2 frivolous lawsuits. 2 lawyers who dropped you for lying. And the audacity to ask mom to call me and pay your legal fees to sue me. This isn't about scrambled eggs, Dominic. This is about 35 years of never once being held accountable for anything. Welcome to accountability. It costs $495 a month. He said, "You're going to destroy me over this." I said, "You tried to take $1.36 million from me. I'm taking $42,000. You destroyed yourself. I'm just collecting the receipt." He didn't respond. Barlow, my lead tech, asked me about it last week. He'd heard through the crew. Small industry. Word travels. He said, "Your brother really sued you for 40%. I said, "Filed the paperwork and everything." 2 lawyers. A courtroom. The whole show. He said, "And the video of your dad." I said, "Dominic can't run a lawnmower. On camera. Under oath conditions. Notarized." My father's exact words. Barlow laughed. He said, "Your family is insane." I said, "My family is my family. My company is my company. Those two things haven't overlapped in 14 years and they're not going to start now." He said, $495 a month for 7 years. That's rough. I said, "So is losing $14,000 in copper pipe because your employee went home at 3 p.m. and forgot to lock the gate. Life's full of rough." He said, "Fair point. Last night I sat in my office after everyone left. The building I own. The desk I bought. The files that saved me from a $1.36 million claim because a retired attorney named Bridger told me 15 years ago to document everything. I thought about calling Dominic. Not to forgive. Not to reduce the judgment. Just to ask him one question. Was it worth it? The lawsuit. The lying. The lawyers. The courtroom. The sanctions. The garnishment. The 7 years of reduced paychecks. Was any of it worth it? Or did you just hear the number $3.4 million and decide you deserved a piece of it because we share a last name?" I didn't call. Because I already know the answer. He heard the number. He saw the vans. He saw the building. And he thought, that should be half mine. Because in Dominic's world, showing up for 11 months and crashing a van and stealing with a credit card and losing $14,000 in copper pipe is the same as 15 years of 14-hour days and $80,000 in inherited debt and a shoebox full of coffee-stained receipts. It's not the same. It was never the same. He asked for 40%. The judge gave him 17 minutes. I gave him $42,000 in accountability. And the garnishment gives him $495 a month for the next 7 years as a reminder that some debts can't be charmed away. My mother asked me to pay for his lawyer. My brother asked for my company. His lawyer asked for a meeting. I gave them all the same answer. Documentation. Because that's what Bridger taught me 15 years ago. And that's what Dominic should have learned before he walked into a courtroom with a story and found out I had a filing cabinet.